Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mr. Bo Wing here with ZeoVation. So he's going to tell us a little bit about his company and product.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bo Wang. I came to the United States in 2011 and graduated with my PhD in chemistry in 2016. And here's what happens after that. We have co-founded the company, ZeoVation, and we have a product that is an highly potent and easily formulated and colorless antimicrobial additive that can be added into a whole bunch of products. For example, coatings, paintings, textile, and even some creams for the wound healing as well. So the problem we're trying to solve is actually the proliferation of bacteria, fungi, and virus in different environments. For example, right now, these things are like growing in the shoes and in the cell phone like surface and keyboards in the room, carpets and everywhere, okay? And at the same time, it is growing in your house, like, somewhere in the kitchen, somewhere on the bed, it's everywhere. So what we have is actually a solution that we believe is revolutionary that can solve this problem ultimately. It's because it has highly potent advantage, which means that it needs a very small amount that can kill a whole bunch of those. All right? And the second thing is easily formulated. What it means that is it can be easily dropped in any industrial process that we have learned. For example, the paintings manufacturing process, the shoes manufacturing. So, and also, it's colorless, it's transparent, and it has really minimum impact on the formulation. So here are like some examples we have of the products that we can add in. And for example, here is an example of a kitchen. And we have this kind of test going on right now, so we can see that in these textiles, it is killing all the bacteria, and in the glass, and then in the towel. And at the same time, we are running the test on the cabinets, countertop, as well as the sink, and all of that. So the reason why it is so efficient is really because of this carrier. This carrier is actually a Nano Zeolite. What it is a highly porous nanoparticle that carries those silver ions inside of it. It's kind of like a Trojan horse that is taking all those like soldiers for the silver ions, take them all the way down to the bacteria. Okay, some of that killing from outside, some of that killing from inside. That's why we have about 100 to 1,000 times higher of efficiency as compared with other silver-based antimicrobial products. So here's kind of a summary of the benefits. I have kind of gone through all of that one by one, and here the real, immediate advantage as I'm having the conversation with potential customers and all that is this ease of formulation. It's because we can use this as a drop-in technology in which we just add one small step in the manufacturing process, and that's it. No more change in the line of those manufacturings of our customers. So our business model is really we want to work with our customers. First thing is we sell this material. Second thing is we just sign the JDA with them so that we just work with them on the product development, charge them fees, and then on top of that, we also go with the royalty as well. So, in terms of manufacturing, we initially do our manufacturing in like 10 grams scale. Now we are up to like 40. Yesterday we have just finished one batch with 100 grams. Those are internal. And externally we have two partners. One is Xenox, one is Austin Chemicals. They are in the process of reproducing this process as well as scaling it up. Right, so I'm going to stop here, and any questions we can.
First of all, I think this is a really interesting product that you've come up with. So when you're talking to potential customers, what are some of their initial questions or initial resistance to take you on as a customer?
Right. It's a very good question. So actually, I have talked to. I was on the road all the time since the beginning of February because we are funded by NSF, SBIR, and they require us to have connections, go out of the building and everything. So among all the conversations that I have had, I think the first reaction is cost. How much it costs. And my answer to that is actually we use very small amount. In other words, give you an example, one of our major competitors' product, they need about 2 to 5% of space in the formulation in order to have the antimicrobial to work. And for us, the space we're asking for is really 0.01 to 0.05%, which means that we have about 2 orders of magnitudes to really mark it up, or have space to mark up, or stuff like this. So I don't think cost is an issue for us because of the high potency.
And just one additional question.
Sure.
So how do you counterbalance what they say, so what? I don't care about bacteria.
Yeah, right. Well, sure. I've seen about many people who have this reaction. I don't care. And I was like, okay, sure. I cannot really afford to educate customers yet. We're still so small. We are actually more focusing on selling to the ones who understand these issues, and then after we have this part in place, then we can start educating and expanding. So that'll be yeah.
Two-part question for you.
Sure.
Part one is when I read your slide and also on the website, it looks like you can market to both the commercial B2B as well as to the B2C marketplaces. And part two is I have a friend of mine, a couple of friends actually, who are very much into educating people on the dangers of a lot of the products that are on the shelves right now and how toxic they are to human beings.
Sure.
Yet government agencies let them through, and that's a whole other conversation. But it looks like you have another solution to this issue of the fact that a lot of stuff that we take for granted, like Windex and such, is really not that healthy for human beings.
Sure.
So that's my two questions.
Yeah. So I would say the first part is about this B2B and B2C. So actually, we do have two approaches in place, and we are focusing on the first one because of it's easier to do. It's whole less amount of regulations in place. All of that. And in terms of the second question, I want to come back to this slide. I want to show that the safety advantage is really coming from this cage. It's because all those bad chemicals is encapsulated. All right, so antimicrobial is really one of these products we have, and we do have a second one in which we put avobenzone inside of these pores. And then avobenzone is encapsulated. And then when you apply the sunscreen on the skin, it is not touching your skin.
Ah,
That is the
Yeah.
advantage. So, yeah.
excellent, thank you for that answer, appreciate it.
Okay, everybody go back to that slide, the Nano Zeolite. So is that a chemical or is that I think a nanotechnology?
So zeolite, it actually originally it existed as those mines under the ground. Okay, so it's like everywhere and under the ground.
So it's naturally occurring.
Right. So about half a century ago, people started making them. It's because it's widely used in the industry. Like every drop of gasoline we have right now have seen it. It's very widely used catalyst. And what we have is those nanoparticles. We are not the ones who invent all those nanoparticles, but we are the ones who are the first ones to make it efficient. So before us, if you want to use it, you have to synthesize that yourself. Trust me, I have spent like half a year of my PhD work trying to reproduce it. It's really hard, okay? And even after I have reproduced it, I only got 5% of yield in like a week. And now, in our strategy, I can have 93% of yield in a day. That is the core of this technology. Is we have a highly efficient synthesis method of this material. And then on this platform, we have all these value-added ideas coming in, like antimicrobials or sunscreens and all that.
One last question. So, I hope I'm thinking right. So, I grew up, my mom don't take a lot of medicine, right? Your body gets used to that, right?
Right.
So, and now you hear that with all the antimicrobial soaps and everything, that the bacteria and things are starting to get immune to that, right? Does that change this at all because of how it delivers?
Right. So it is kind of commonly an issue for the antibiotics, like all those kind of antibiotics you have taken, like as medicines and stuff. But this is antimicrobial. Difference is you're not taking it. It's not eating type of method. It's really on the surface that is not like For example, you don't take it as tablets, but you apply it to the surface you touch. And then it's not growing on that surface, and it's not causing any resistance or anything. That is just the nature of silver. Yeah.
What's the lifetime of its effectiveness?
Currently, our test, I would say that the longest we have tested is about half a year to a year, and it is like same performance. So,
Is that what you expect that?
yeah, sure. So, it is related to the formulations, all right, and it's also related to the environment and all that. But currently, what we have is actually we have applied it onto the surface of glass, and after half a year, still it's working. That's the only data point we have right now. And we are, it's actually part of the SBIR's grant that we have to do eventually. So.
Does it, is it working at the same level? Is that what you're saying? It's
Yeah.
not, okay.
So in the manufacturing process, if it's actually in the textiles or in the coatings or whatever, is it decaying? Is that how it delivers the antimicrobial effectiveness, or is it just something that exists and never? Does it break down? Does it decay? Or I don't understand the process of how it actually is effective over time.
Sure. So here's this. So we put it inside of those formulations, all right? So all those like zeolite particles is always in the formulation. It is held in there. And what is mobile is really all those ions. They are released. This is because it's so small, as long as you have aqueous media, it is coming out. That is kind of the idea, that we keep this cage held in the formulation so that we have long enough of lifetime, and then all those ions released whenever it's necessary.
I think you're seeing your challenge, right? Your challenge is that we're not smart enough to understand how this works. Right, so as a consumer, it's hard for me to wrap my head around why I want this. I hear what you're saying. There are all these microbes, and I can get sick, and I'm wearing shoes without socks right now, so you're making me freak out. But I think that that's the challenge. Whereas when you go to production companies, right, and you ask them to put it in, they probably have scientists that can understand this. What I'm going to look for as a consumer is what did that do to the price of the product. So if every pair of shoes I get goes up by $20 because your product's in it, I want to see the value. So what did I get because your product's in it?
Right.
Well, then we come back to the fact that I'm not smart enough to understand that. So I think that that's the challenge as you think through how do you both communicate this to production facilities and to the ultimate consumer. Because a lot of people are going to say, this is all made up, they just do this so they can sell the shoe for $20 more, right? So I think that's the challenge.
Sure. Yes. So actually, in our, in my experience, I was really trying to talk to a whole bunch of, connections with three different backgrounds. So today, my preparation was kind of the pitch I have to the customers, potential customers who have either I have a shoes company or I have plastic company that I may have interest in this. And to explain this, how this works in kind of layman term is we have a carrier that is like the vehicle of soldiers, okay? And we just put it in different environments. We open the door to release the soldiers whenever it's necessary. So we don't lose those soldiers in the situation where nothing is happening. We only release that when something is happening. That is kind of the layman term explanation on it. And what's special about us is our vehicle is very special. It can be hidden in any environment.
So to follow on, I've been thinking the whole time from a consumer perspective. I'm definitely not a chemistry major, polar opposite of that. So from the consumer's perspective, I have a countertop that's either made with this or it has been applied to my countertop after the fact of production, and which then has a 6-month lifespan, give or take, depending on the environment. So normally my counter's clean, I keep it clean, bleach it down, whatever. That's not going to impact this product. But then one day there's some salmonella left on top of the counter. Now the soldiers are going to come out of the Trojan horse, attack it, eradicate it to the point of there's no more bad stuff that we can cross-contaminate with. How long does that process take? If there's even an answer to that, or am I thinking about it too basic?
So my general answer based on the experience of all those testing is as long as you have several minutes of touch, it is working. So it doesn't really have to be a whole long time of sitting on it or anything. So very short period of time of touch and it is working.
So you throw a chicken breast on the counter.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Those questions reminded me of one more I have for you.
Sure.
Going back to this gentleman's question, what I'm about to say as a disclaimer might be a little past the average consumer, but it was for me 5 years ago until I had some smart people talk to me about it. So when I see up on your slide, you talk about silver ions.
Right.
I was told about 5 years ago, you have to do your own research in the room, and you always have to get past page 1 of Google because you have to dig deeper than what page 1 tells you. You have to really research it. But colloidal silver, have you ever heard of colloidal silver?
Of course.
Because I think what you're talking about might commercialize more colloidal silver. Colloidal silver's been out there for years. And when I dug into it, it's like, this is pretty cool stuff. It's just it never was mass marketed. You know, the mass consumer never figured it out. It wasn't mainlined. I'm thinking you might be onto something because of the colloidal silver background. So I wanted to run that by you.
Colloidal silver, yes. So we do have another product strategy that we have developed early on in which we make very, very small colloidal silvers. Those are actually silver clusters, 1 to 2 nanometers, okay? They are stacked on the surface of these particles, but we have put a hold on it. And the reason is really about regulations. EPA told us, if you want to register the colloidal silver, you have to do a whole bunch of safety testings. And also, there are like some reports a few years ago saying that EPA is not going to allow any of those like silver colloids anymore. So that was the main reason why we have stopped on it and like focus on ions.
Gotcha. Well, again, when you're a small business, you can't do everything.
Sure, exactly. So you have to like focus on one thing. Always like keep refining the.
Of course.
Yeah.
Good answer. Real good answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
I saw that one of your partners was Xerox.
Yep.
So what's their application of the product?
So.
Like, why would they?
Right.
Yeah, why are they interested?
So actually, Xerox is the largest manufacturer of nanoparticles in the country.
Oh, is it Xerox or Xenon?
Xerox.
Okay.
Yeah. Xerox.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't see it.
Yeah, it's because they manufacture all those nanoparticles that you use in ink. Yeah, so they are interested in this product we have, and they have just reproduced our synthesis process in 40-gram scales, and they are interested in scaling out to like 1 kilo. So.
That leads exactly to my question, which is, it's a lot different to make this stuff in your lab, a couple grams versus
Absolutely.
tons. What's the plan, and what have been the options as far as building it yourself or going with a contractor to scale it up?
Right. So currently, internally, we have gone out from 10 grams to like 100 grams a batch. And currently, in our right now hood, we can run like 4 batches at the same time. Each batch is taking 1 day of synthesis, 1 day of cleanup. So I would say our production is about 1 kilo to 1.5 kilos a week or stuff like that, right? And then externally, their first step is to reproduce that 40-gram scale, and it's done. And next step is kilo scale. And so that is the short-term idea. And then by end of the year, we do want to scale up to the metric ton scale. I mean, if we can confirm the interest of the customers. Currently, we have 3 JDAs signed already. So if we keep getting more and confirm on the needs from customers, we can scale up.
Okay, so I think you sort of alluded to this, but I want to ask,
Sure.
is there any health or environmental risk with adding silver ions to everything?
Right, so it's a very good question. Surface or the ions, only individual things, and you have to be really careful about what claims you have. For example, I cannot say that I am cleaning up your hands. No, I can only say that I am cleaning up the surface of this table that is preventing the growth of bacteria and fungi on the table. So I would say that in order to meet the regulations of California, it's more about kind of adjusting the claims wisely. And as for different sets of soldiers, sure. So our core technology is not really about. I should say it's not only about this antimicrobial. Okay, so besides silver, we can have copper in it, and we can have like zinc in it. There are like a whole bunch of ions that has been studied have antimicrobial efficacies. So we do have all those options in place. We just focus on this silver at this stage. Thank you.
All right, so one, do you have any IP protection there?
Sure.
Okay, so you've got that protection. So it seems like a great play for a license deal, the joint venture stuff and everything, where you're working so that you're letting them go to the consumer and take that risk and marketing message and all that, I guess, right?
Right.
So, and I think the focus here, so you said you tested it for 6 months and everything, so but let's say on the coating that goes on this table and everything, so that would be your customer, you sell to them, and then they put it on them, and the idea is that it's going to have a better microbacterial protection on this. And you say so is this an infinite, that these ions are always in there and then flowing and everything? I think that was kind of what we were alluding to with some of the stuff, do they disappear once they, do they sacrifice themselves to kill the salmonella on the table or whatever? Or is it just a process where they continually are limitless, essentially?
All right, so it's a very good question, and I want to answer that in a few aspects. And the first aspect, if you put that in the formulation, okay, so any surface you have, the coating on the formulation is worn out over time. All right, so all this size of these nanoparticles are like 20 to 30 nanometers. So every time you worn out the layer on top of it, there's always like something new is coming up. As long as you still have that layer of coating, you still have access to these new particles. That will be the, I would say, the hypothesis we have. We haven't really tested all these worn out situations yet. So, and the second thing is we do have a partner who's ALC. I don't know if you guys, ALC is also a Red One's company. What they make is the sprays. They make all-purpose cleansers, okay? So what we are trying to do is we add our antimicrobial to that spray. All right, so all I have to do is spray it on it, wipe it off, and it's live again.
Right. So,
Yeah.
that would be my next question, is if you could do,
Yeah.
so where it's out after a year, and hey, it's just like you coach your, your granite counters, after a period of
Absolutely.
time. Hey, here's another coating to put down with this in it.
Sure.
Okay, last question. So are you looking only at this nanoparticle carrying silver right now, or is there capability for it to do other things?
It can do other things. Like, for example, we do have another product in which we put avobenzone inside of it. And yeah, so it is a broad spectrum as well as stable sunscreen active ingredients. So actually, up to now, we are able to put ions in it, have organic molecules in it, So it is actually a platform type of technology in which we can put in a whole bunch of different things inside of the pores for different purposes. Yeah.
All right, so obviously we talked about that. So this is the vehicle, the Zeolite is the vehicle, and that is really the secret sauce, if you will. That's on the nano level. That's what you guys have been able to do. I'm very familiar with like nano tubes, nano wires, and I think to what Dan was alluding to is the production of that. That was always the thing, was scale.
Right.
So and we could produce very good nano wires and I was part of the technology that the nanotubes that we're producing were, tremendous, and we could grow them faster and all that. What's your production look like as far as, when you're dealing with nanotechnology, it's obviously something completely different than what we think of with manufacturing. What's your production process, and then is your idea to have the formula and then license it in joint venture and not be involved in the production, but rather give it out there, or are you guys having to grow and yield your own product and then deliver it?
Right. So in terms of manufacture, actually, we do have partners who has already reproduced that. In other words, this product can be produced in the current existing setup in those manufacturers' facilities. So in other words, as long as we have enough of interest, we can raise enough of fund, we can always start that process at any time. So our secret is really the design of this process as well as the chemicals we use.
All right, any other questions? All right, well, wow, really engaging, thank you so much. So the last question that we like to ask is, what can we as a community do to help you with this venture?
Yeah, very good question. So, I was kind of thinking about including a slide about what to ask, but I had no idea of who the audience would be and all this background. But okay, at this stage, we are focusing on three things. One thing is going through the regulations. EPA regulations is very important because we cannot sell until we get approved. And the second thing is we are working on this manufacturing scale up. We do have partners. It's going okay. And third thing is really my focus in the past few months and in the coming kind of rest of the year at least is to go out and get connections. So if you have anyone in mind or any connections who may be interested in adding an antimicrobial feature in their products, you can have introductions. That would be great. So yes, and we do have kind of program to how to process this type of introductions and stuff. So yeah. So if you have anyone in mind, shoot me an email. We can have the conversation. So
Awesome. Thank you very much, Bill.
thank you guys.